Good morning, everybody. Betting for breakfast. We are back for college football season. Off a couple weeks, had a couple vacations during the summer. We were hitting some win totals early, but now we're back to talk some conference bets. And we're going to get into week 0, maybe some high profile week 1 games. So, very excited. The season 2 weeks away before week 0. So, we're here to get you prepped. So, hopefully, you can win some winning bets. First off, before we get started, guys, if you haven't, make sure you download the Sharp app, the premier sports gambling app out there. There are a ton of professional handicappers that are digging in, running their models for college football and the NFL. Our top prop section has been making a ton of money for our bettors, so make sure if you haven't joined the Sharp app, you join it today. Download the app. The Discord is in the link below in the description here. We look forward to having you guys join our community for the football season. Now, let's get started, get down to business. I'm Mark Drumheller. I'm here with Dave Glechter, and we have a new guest this week, Ryan from the Sharp app. Those on the Sharp app know him as Fight On 2016. Ryan did a tremendous job last year in our college football channel with his model. Had a very profitable year. Ryan, we appreciate you joining us, and I'm excited to see if our takes align for this upcoming football season.
Yeah, I'm very excited to be here, and I'm really excited for the football season. It's been a long summer, and I'm really excited to get these games going.
So, quick question before we get started. When you're running your models, the landscape of college football has changed a lot, right? With all the movement, recruiting's different now with the NIL, and there's just so much changes. Quarterback carousels flipping all over. Is it been a little bit more of a challenge this year with all that player movement, or is that something that you can kind of tweak as you go, and you're pretty confident in what you have so far this year?
Yeah, I think we're actually seeing a big change in terms of like how to actually get an edge, because I think a lot of analytics and a lot of models right now don't really know how to deal with the transfer portal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a way that you can pivot your system and to beat the lines early on when you see a lot of solid transfer movements into one school, or if a transfer is highly ranked in like transfer rankings, but like has not proved it out in the field, and lines adjust that way, you can go the other way and try to make some more money.
That's awesome. Yeah, good stuff there. Definitely. I can't wait for the season to get started. Dave, I want to kick it over to you. We've been talking about win totals, and last year, we got started. We started hot. One of the first, week 0, we had a very profitable week. And today we're going to talk a little bit about conference bets. And we're talking before the show. We're a little bit aligned on one, but with all the quarterback movement in college football, I think it's made the conferences a little bit more competitive.
It has. I didn't love it, but I got to a point where I think it's the new norm, and I'm starting to adjust, and it's fun. I mean, it really is like free agency, right? And it's turned a lot of teams from maybes to possiblies. And then, I look at a team like South Carolina, obviously. They probably made the biggest leap out there. So, there's potential for teams to really just jump up that quick based upon this transfer portal. It does make things really interesting in college football.
Yeah, it's almost some of those second-tier schools. It's a little bit like it just trickles down. And some of those schools have shots at quarterbacks that they typically wouldn't have a shot at. You know what I mean? And that kind of helps because, they're getting, they're getting their spot taken by, other players that are moving in from big schools. So it's a lot of movement. I think, I'm not sure if we'll see it settle down. I don't think the offseason will ever be the same, but I think it makes it a little bit more exciting and a little bit more, I think, chances in the betting market to take advantage because these conferences are a little volatile. We're going to talk about the ACC in a little bit, and that's one of the conferences that I think that has a wide distribution of outcomes that we could see this year. But before we do that, Dave, I wanted to get into the American. I know that's a conference we talked about. We're aligned here. What was the conference bet that you have lined up for the American?
Yeah, I mean, I like the Cougars, baby. Houston, I'm not a huge Dana Holgorsen fan. They're just, maybe it's the face. I don't know, but there's something about Dana that just rubs me the wrong way. But the boy can coach, and he really took I thought was a giant gamble leaving a school like West Virginia to go down to Houston, but Houston built putting all this equity into their football program, and now here it is. He's starting to reap those benefits on that risky move 3-4 years later. He's bringing in a team that I think is the odds-on favorite to win the conference. Last year, they finished 12-2, losing to just Texas Tech and Cincinnati. I know Cincy's still there. Cincy will have a powerful team, but here's the advantage of Houston. They don't have to play UCF or Cincy in the regular season. So mark them in the title game already. And if you're going to give me plus 250 odds that they're already playing in the title game, I think they have great value. And we already talked about 12-2, but bringing back Clayton Tune and his favorite receiver in Nathaniel Dell, who had almost 1,300 yards, 90 catches. I just think that connection there is going to make them that much more difficult to defend. And I mean, again, they had a really good defense last year, lost a couple pieces, but they had guys filling right away, guys off the bench. I think they're talented. I think they're deep. I like Houston a lot, and a lot of it's the schedule, but a lot of it is the talent they have too.
Yeah, the schedule certainly doesn't hurt. I mean, not catching Cincinnati, UCF, I think that's huge for them. And, what I really like about this team, Dave, is the defense. And up front, you cannot run on this team. They did a tremendous job. They're one of the best teams on third downs throughout the season last year. And, I expect much of the same. And they really don't have a tough schedule. I think they, SMU, I think, is in a tricky spot for them, but I expect them to be able to handle business. And, it's interesting to me is how far will it go? If they are a team that, can, make a long run as undefeated, how long can they take that? Ryan, what are your thoughts on Houston and their prospects first of winning the conference? And then not only that, if they are undefeated for a long period of time, how far do you think that can catapult them in the rankings?
Yeah, I think they're a clear top 10 team, in my opinion. I think Cincinnati, in what they did against Georgia in the playoff, kind of ruined everyone's chances for any playoff group of 5 team, sadly. But this team has it. I mean, I have them ranked well within the top 10. Bringing back Tune is, he's a top 5 quarterback last year. He has Dell back. But like you said, this really is a defensive team. The front 7 is the best in the American and better than most Power 5 teams. And I think in terms of the conference itself, the fact that Cincinnati lost a lot of pieces on defense, especially in that secondary, I think this is a team that in a title game can really throw on them and actually really put points up where what Cincinnati has to replace on offense as well on an already semi-average, below average offense. I think this is Houston's all day.
Yeah, an excellent point, especially with the secondary, Ryan, when you talk about, Sauce Gardner, and they were so strong in a secondary, and they're not going to be able to fill and replace those guys, right away, kind of step in. And, that opens things up for Houston. And I think that the combination of that and the schedule, really sets them up nicely. I mean, do we think that this is a team that can make a run, that can go undefeated, that can end up maybe in a New Year's Six bowl? Is that a possibility, do we think, for Houston from a high-end outcome?
I say no. I think it's a possibility they get close to undefeated, but I think what Ryan already said, since his performance last year has ruined anybody's shot to play in the playoffs out of these non-Power 5s. And so could they play New Year's Six? Maybe. Yeah, I guess they could, but definitely not playoffs.
Yeah,
you agree with that, Ryan?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think New Year's Six is well within the cards. I think there's other good group of 5 teams to vie for that spot. That if I think we were talking about a pre-show, but Dana Holgerson's going to dig in Holgerson, and he's going to probably mess up one or two ways. He's a wild card at best, so. There might be 1 or 2 games that slip from his fingers, but I do think they are the best group of 5 team on paper. And I would put them in my top spot to make that group of 5 game.
Yeah, I love it, man. I love them to win the conference, win totals over. It's probably a play on it early in the season. Do you do that a lot, Ryan? With your model, if you take a team from a futures perspective, obviously that means that we feel like there's value in the market. Do you kind of just follow that through the first week or two, just to kind of making sure hey, if there's an edge in the futures market, does that typically translate to an edge in the beginning of the season when we get into week 0 and week 1?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all matchup based. So, I mean, if I really like a team and I hope they're playing a team I don't like, and there's a really big edge there. But yeah, I mean, I try to kind of have the model from a future perspective lead into those first 2 weeks, because I think that is where you're really going to see an edge or really test your knowledge.
before they catch up.
Exactly.
Yeah, before the market kind of catches up. Awesome. Good stuff. Let's move over. So you guys have it for the American Houston plus 250. I think you can get them at right now for the conference. That is the play. We're on that one. And let's have some fun now, guys. Let's move over to the ACC, which I think is one of the most fascinating conferences in college football. Obviously, Clemson, the big story last year was not Clemson, right? So, DJ cannot get the job done at quarterback. They struggled. Teams that were on that early and were betting the Clemson unders are, sailing somewhere in their yacht, enjoying their money right now because it was just money in the bank week after week, it seemed like. And now the big question is, can DJ come back? Can Clemson return to be the king of the ACC? And if not, what teams are really viable and ready to kind of step in? Dave, I'm going to let you start things off. I know that, a lot of people like NC State. We talked about that team. I'm pretty high on Miami as well. But there's a lot of teams, I feel like, in the ACC that can kind of sneak up there that provide some good value in the betting market.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, let me just start off. Everything you said about Clemson is right, but they still went 10-3. And, there's this theory and this idea that they were, awful last year. They were awful for Clemson standards. They didn't make the conference championship.
They were hard to watch. They were awful.
Hard to watch, but they won some. They won some late games,
they
and they beat a good team in the bowl game. I'm just saying, they're not that far off. They had a bad season on their standards. Didn't make the playoffs first time in 6 years. I mean, that's the kind of standards they set for this team. And listen, you're looking at Renegade right above me here, Florida State's horse, right? I'm an ACC fan, and I'm not a Clemson guy, but I have a lot of respect for that team. I think they're going to. Out of all the conference bets, I'm not a big, bet the favorite kind of guy. But in this one, I really think there is value in Clemson. You can find some markets at minus 125. I've seen it bounce to 140. I'm in either range there. I'm okay with it. Their hardest games are at home, conference-wise. NC State, Wake Forest back-to-back, I think, early in the season. I just think this defense allowed 15 points a game. Yes, they lost Venable.
Defense is incredible, man.
But they got all the pieces back again. I think DJ does rebound. 9 TDs, 10 interceptions, second worst offense in the ACC. That's hard to say. Second worst offense in the ACC when you have the Dukes and the Syracuses, but they were. And I just think they have been so ultra focused on getting him right. I have a lot of faith in him. And I also have faith that if he isn't right by week 3 or 4, he's out. I don't think they have the patience they'll have this year. So I'm high on Clemson.
That's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to get to, and I'm glad and you brought that up because how quick do we think Dabo pulls the trigger? Because I believe they have a true freshman that's like a massive recruit. I think he's I think his name begins his name. Yep. Yeah. Does Dabo just go right to him and just start the new era and kind of is he going to be quick to pull the trigger on DJ?
Week 5. I think if you come out of the Wake Forest, NC State mess with a loss, I think it is a pull time. But you got some layups before then that I think he's going to be fine. Georgia Tech, they'll be fine. Furman, Louisiana Tech. But in one of those 2 games, and now with Hartman out, Wake could be a layup too.
Well, you know what? I think Wake is a layup anyway, just because I was on Clemson last year when they played Wake because just stylistically, that defense is going to eat that. It always eats that offense up. There's nothing. It's just a bad matchup thing with Wake and Clemson. But
but I tell you, I think there is value in other teams. I'll get to those, but I want to get Ryan's take on Clemson.
So this is where the hot takes start coming. I think Clemson is an 8 or 9 win team.
Under.
I would go under their win total. It's minus 120, so I don't know if I really want to lay with the negative juice. So there's a couple things here. One is I think Dabo is too much of an old school coach to make that next step. He has a very weird stance about transfers where he won't go in the transfer portal at all. So people will leave his program, albeit not as much as other programs. But you see an Alabama who adds Burton, Gibbs, people on defense. You can restock if you're a top talented team. And for him to take this standpoint of I'm not going to go into the transfer portal, frankly, it's going to make his team worse in the national landscape. And so I think we saw that a bit last year where, he didn't kind of dig into the portal. And then the second thing is he seems to really trust his quarterback and his guy. I think it took I forgot how many games it took for Lawrence to take over as the last true stud freshman. But it seems like he trusts his guy, might stick with DJ a little bit too long, in my opinion. I do agree they have cupcakes to start the season, but I think when they get into the tough games, I see them regressing over time. And I think this kind of leads into, who are the true dynasties of college football. And I think Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State are the three, and then everyone else kind of rises and falls. And I think we're starting to see the fall of Clemson. And I'm sure I'm going to live this down in a year.
Yeah, I love it. It's not always clear, so I love hot takes like that.
Yeah, and that's the one thing is, it's, if you can get in front of something like that, incredibly valuable, not only throughout the year, but just, because you're going to be ahead of the market. Like, obviously, if you see things down the road that are coming that are going to lead to teams' downfall or success, it's a prime spot to bet. So, Ryan, I wanted to, well, I'll get both of your takes, right? Because this is a game that I already bet, right? I laid the 21 against Georgia Tech in week 1 with Clemson. My in or my out? How you guys feeling about that one?
I think you're in. I mean, again, looking at Clemson, they really only have four true road games. But looking at the early game, I guess that's kind of a semi-road game, neutral site. But Georgia Tech's bad. I mean,
that's what I mean. It's Georgia Tech. It's got to,
They didn't fix much either. Really, what concerns me is the style matchup that you just said that is similar to the Wake team. Georgia Tech's defense is atrocious, and their strength, obviously, they like to do the run game. Where's Clemson's strength? Right up the middle. And I'm with you. I think Clemson needs to make some sort of statement early on. So I would say you're in now. And I understand where Ryan is long term, but for that game, I feel like you're in good shape.
Ryan, what does the model tell us, and what do you think in regards to Clemson laying the 21 against Georgia Tech?
Yeah, I would agree with Dave here. I think you take Clemson or you just pass. I think my model is on Georgia Tech, but I think it's a pass spot because of all the reasons that Dave said. And it's really just because my model thinks that Clemson is an above average team, and Georgia Tech, while they're horrible, it kind of plays that out to being, Clemson as only like a 17, 18 point favorite.
Yeah, I was kind of mad. I wanted to get it under the 21, but then, I ended up getting the 21, and I'm like, all right, it was like I didn't want to pay juice on the 20, and I'm just like, all right, I'll just take the 21 and run with it. And I think they're in an all right spot. I think week 1 they can get the job done there. So who do we think, guys, like outside of Clemson, if Clemson isn't, doesn't win the conference, Ryan, obviously you're on that page. Where do you see value as far as the other teams are concerned? Is it Miami? Is it NC State? Is it both those teams?
Yeah, so again, hot takes going to pop up here. So on Miami, I do like Miami. I think we were talking before this of my view is Mario Cristobal is a top 3-4 coach in college football. I think he's an amazing recruiter. I think he gets his guys up, and I think he does a very solid job as a coach. And I think he eventually, now that NIL is a thing with, South Beach being the crypto center of the world, I think he is going to get plenty of money and plenty of people that are going to have their hand out. So I think eventually Miami is going to be the cream of the crop in this conference. But I don't think that is this year. If I had to make a wager, and I made a wager in the Heisman because I think that's better odds than this, but I think Louisville will win this conference.
My man, I did not expect that, but that was my next question. We jumped the shark. I bet Louisville over the 6.5. I wrote it up for Yahoo last week or earlier this week. And I love them. I love Malik Cunningham. Like I said, I guess that's the bet you're referring to from the Heisman. I guess they get all their offensive line back. Little bit of turnover in the wide receiver room, right? But they brought some transfers in, and they really addressed, how much it works. We'll see. It really addressed the secondary and the linebacking core in the transfer portal to kind of tighten up, that defense. But I really think it's about Malik Cunningham and his ability in his senior year to kind of use his experience to really ascend into one of the top college, quarterbacks in college football. Now, listen, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, those guys are at the top, but that second tier below, I think Malik Cunningham can get in that conversation this year.
Yeah, I think he's a beast. I think he is going to have his Lamar Jackson season this year. I think they're going to win enough games to put him at least in New York, and we'll see what happens. on defense, this is kind of where, they have to be, a really solid, 9-10 win team to get the job done. And defense is where they really went into the transfer portal and dug out some talent. One in particular that I think is going to go over missed, but he's going to have the most impact is Jermaine Lowlay out of Arizona State. Massive defensive tackle, just going to plug up the hole. Everyone rated Arizona State because of all their sanctions. And so Louisville got this, and it was between Louisville and USC, and this is why I know so much about him. He's massive. I mean, he plugs up holes. He'll take 2 guys on him. And I think he's really going to help them, set the standard for run stopping. And then it just leave it to the secondary, and hopefully it improves enough to give it back to Malik to absolutely butcher teams.
Yeah, I really like that offense, man. I love Cunningham. This is great. I was going to ask you if they could get to 7 wins, and now you're talking about conference. I feel much, much better about my bet, in regards to Louisville. But they're going to be a fun team to watch, and I think that, Satterfield's doing some good stuff there. And this is the year I think it all kind of comes together for them. Dave, I think we talked previously pretty big on NC State.
Yep.
Is that how you see it going if it's not Clemson?
No, so, I mean – yeah, I love NC State, and I like the overpick that we talked about. They got everything coming back. You know what's weird about NC State? They've never won 10 games ever in their school history. They had a chance last year. They were 9-3 going to the bowl. I forget who it was had to go out because of COVID. They couldn't find a replacement, and there they go, sitting at 9-3. It's a team. When I say that, to win that side of the conference, you're going to need 10, I feel. So I can't take them in the futures market. It really comes down to, do they beat Clemson early in the season? If they do, they'll have a great shot. But I'm looking on the other side of the division. We talked about Miami. I think their biggest signing, I know you love Cristobal, and I'm good with him. But Josh Gaddis going to Miami, I thought was probably their biggest signing. I think he's going to do wonders for TVD. I like Miami, but I'm going to give you a long shot too, just like Ryan just did. Give me some Carolina. Carolina's sitting at 1,500. Last year they end 6-7, but they were everybody's darlings going into the preseason. It was Sam Howell's time. They had, they lost the 2 running backs with Javonte Williams and Michael Carter the year before, but it was Sam Howell's time. And you know what? It was his time. It was his time to lay on his back. Held the ball too long, got hit a lot. I think that's going to be the big change in this offense this year. They have 2 quarterbacks duking it out in Jacoby Criswell and Drake May, but, both of them are, 4-star plus talent. I think, what's even more important is that defense. They went out in the transfer portal, picked up a couple of defensive linemen, a couple linebackers. They had the returning tackler coming back, and they fired the whole coaching staff. Gene Chiswick's coming in. And let's talk about the schedule. It's soft as Charmin. I mean, you're sitting here. Yeah, App State might be a little challenge early on, but Georgia State, out of conference, FAMU, it's not good. And their hardest games are at home this year. Pitt, NC State, Notre Dame. They got to go to Miami. We can chalk that up as a loss, but everything else I think is gettable for this team. I think winning that side of the conference gives you the best chance. You guys are on Louisville as well. But give me some 1,500 Tar Heel love. When no one talks about them is when they play better.
Yeah, it's really not a bad point. I mean, the real spot where I feel like they were let down is people expected so much progression from that defense that just never came. I mean, the defense was just put so much scoreboard pressure on Sam Howell and the offense. They felt like they had to score every time they touched the ball, and it was ultimately their demise. So they clean house, they shit can everyone, get them out of there, and now they start over on defense. And if they can get a new identity there to complement the offense, I think they'll be in pretty good shape. So nice long shot take there with North Carolina.
And one other point, think about it, on that side, right, in the coast, it's Miami and who? So that's why it just feels like there's decent odds there. Where I love the Louisville pick, but they do have to battle NC State. They have to battle Pitt. They have to battle – oh, no, Pitt is on the other side. They have to battle Clemson, obviously. But, yeah, I think there's a long shot happening. We saw it last year, right? Pitt, Wake Forest. So hopefully it's one of ours.
Well, I think Louisville does have Pitt, if I'm not sure. But I'll tell you what, Pitt's a team, we can talk about them for a second. They're a team that, everything I hear out of there is just not good. Narduzzi's like, he wants to go back to 3 yards in a cloud of dust. They lose the coordinator. What was it, Whipple? They lose him. They lose Addison. Obviously, they lose a ton of talent. And I just feel like they're a team that, wants to play. It's almost like Anthony Lynn in like the NFL. Like he wants to like call games, or like Zimmer, to make sure it's like a 3-point game at the end of the game. And then, there's some variance comes and they lose the teams they shouldn't lose to. And they sit there and, do the same thing over and over again. So I think Pitt a little bit down on them. Ryan, any other takes in the ACC? Outside of Louisville, obviously you dropped the bomb with that one, but I love it. It's I love the Cardinals this year and Malik Cunningham. But anything Heisman, anything related, any other bets in regards to the ACC or any other conference before we move into week 0?
Not for. I like the take on North Carolina. I think that's strong. I think the Coastal is extremely weak. I have it as the weakest division in all of college football, and so I think it is wrought to. Anyone can really step up and make that title game, and then you're in a one game to win $15 versus one is a decent bet to take. And anything can happen with, especially if Jacoby steps up. I think any dual threats. I mean, he's an absolute stud.
Yep.
And so I totally understand and get that bet, and I might place it myself. On the I'll just add one more hot take before we all kick me off for good because of all these takes. Out of the Pac-12, I obviously went to USC. I think there is a sleeper to win the Pac-12 at plus what I grab it at plus 2,400. Oregon State.
Loved them last year. Loved them last year. They were my darlings. I love Oregon.
So Oregon State has probably the best offense in the Pac-12 outside of USC if USC performs the expectations. And USC obviously has a ton of transfers that have to gel and mesh. But they have a solid offense. They have a solid defense. Outside of the ACC Coastal, the Pac-12 North is just a dumpster fire. Oregon losing Cristobal, I think, is going to have a massive impact. I think this is the Beavs to take the North fairly easily. And then we'll see if it's Utah or USC that they face against in the title game. Actually, Pac-12 switched to no divisions. So, sorry. But we'll see.
That's right, they did. Yeah.
Either of those two, they play. I think they have a good chance. 24-1, I'm taking it.
I love that. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Well, I was just going to say, the one thing you said about Oregon, guess where they play this year? They're playing Corvallis. And that was the one key to looking at Oregon State last year. Their home field advantage is so tremendous. I've actually been out there a few times. And they when they're good, it's a very, very tough place to play. And I think having Oregon in that right around Thanksgiving, I think that could be the flip there to get them, possibly, a title winner. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think they have a very favorable schedule, like you said, based on the North. I love the pick.
Yeah, I mean, and the key thing for the listeners, everybody watching, we talk about North Carolina 15-1. We're talking about Oregon State here at 24-1, right? It's important to keep in mind that if they can just get to the title game, you have your hedging opportunity there, right? Like you can hedge out if you need to at those types of numbers. It's not you're buying on the team to win the conference, but you have the opportunity. You really just need them to get there at that number, and then you're guaranteed to kind of make some money. You make the numbers work. You agree with that, Ryan?
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, I think you can definitely try to make some money the other way.
Like if USC gels and they're a powerhouse down the line, and listen, Oregon State's getting there, and we know they're massive underdogs. You can just kind of flip it and hedge it, and make sure that you get out of there with some profit. But it's going to be fun, man. Pac-12 is going to be a ton of fun. I agree with you in regards to USC. I think that the expectations are a little bit high for them to just kind of run right up into the I think their win total was 9.5. Yeah. So for them to win 10 games, I think is a little bit of a stretch just because, again, they still have some issues on defense and the continuity and getting everybody to gel. And not only that, but it's Caleb Williams it's going to be a lot of mouths to feed. And it sounds silly, but for somebody in that position that he is, going to a new, environment and working with new players. And, it could be a little bit of hey, everybody went there for the same reason to, be part of this great, program and to do big things this year. And if they don't get off to a start and don't gel immediately, you could see some kind of, bickering within the locker room or whatnot, like people wanting more of the ball and that sort of thing, because that's kind of when you build things this way, that's one of the drawbacks is like people aren't really there for the long, you know what I mean? They're there to win this year, and that could kind of pop up for USC. But awesome stuff, guys, with the conference bets. I think we gave a lot of great values for the listeners, but let's look ahead to the games. The games start in 2 weeks. Week 0, everything kicks off in Ireland, which with Nebraska and Northwestern. That's a 12-point spread, and this is a Northwestern team that we've talked about previously, Ryan, and I think you're on the same page with this. Overvalued in the futures market, win total at like 7.5, I think it was. I think that's definitely a play to the under. But when we look at this game, I couldn't lay 12 points with Nebraska and Scott Frost against anybody, I feel like. Now, it doesn't mean that Northwestern's a bet. They obviously got clobbered by Nebraska last year. But, and obviously from a talent perspective, Nebraska has a huge edge. But, Ryan, what are your thoughts on this game, Nebraska and Northwestern? Scott Frost on the hot seat, laying double digits here in a weird environment in Ireland.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be weird. I agree. I honestly don't know where to go on this. My model has, now that's moved down to Northwestern, has Nebraska, but I have a sneaky suspicion that Northwestern actually could win this game, even though they're very bad. It's a very bad team. But they have the better offensive line. Cam Porter coming back. I think they'll probably just hand it off to him. There's talks of a QB battle. Polinsky last year was absolutely horrible, so I'm glad that Fitz is maybe trying to make a change there. And then, Northwestern's known for its defense. Fitz is a good defensive coach. Maybe he makes a stride and makes his team competitive, but I have them as a really bad team. And so this is all just hope and prayers on Nebraska, the fact that they're also horrible. And I don't think Casey Thompson's the answer. And so I think that they probably will win. I don't know if it'll get to the 2 scores where they need it to beat a cover, but also I might just skip this game and focus on other games.
Yeah, 380 on the money line is Northwestern. Dave, what's your thoughts? With Nebraska, a lot of expectations, but a lot of pressure on Scott Frost laying the 12 points here against Northwestern after having to travel to Ireland.
Yeah, I mean, my first lean is what Ryan said. I think I might just pass and just kind of trying to figure this one out as it goes. Get a little nervous with the, where they're playing and everything, the time difference. I think there's a lot of handicapping aspects that go into it that I probably don't have the greatest grasp on. But if you had to lay me and just put a little bit on it for entertainment value, I kind of lean Nebraska. That's how bad I think Northwestern is. I have probably the same opinions you guys do about Scott Frost. If he makes it out this season, I'll be very surprised. It's just that I think Nebraska might get some early momentum here and then do Scott Frost things when they get back in the Big Ten schedule. So I would lean the 12, but I got to get closer to the game to really give me my solid pick.
Yeah, my concern is that, the schedule sets up very nicely for them, right? But the Scott Frost things is that him losing those games.
I know.
That's kind of like what he does, right? They set it up on a silver platter for him and he spills it all over his shirt. You know what I mean? So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out with Frost in Nebraska this year, but definitely not a team that I'm on. I didn't bet that game in week 1, but
my spread shows it should be like 16 or 17. That's what scares me. Like, is that the Scott Frost factor? Hey, I don't think 17, but man, I'm taking 5 away because I don't know.
Yeah, that's the thing is there's no model that can kind of incorporate what Scott Frost does on game day and the lack of motivation. But the other games on there, listen, a lot of line movement, Ryan. We talked about Nevada. That line is down to 9.5 now, keeps plunging. I actually took New Mexico State at a bigger number at the 11.5. Do you agree with the line movement? And do you think that, that it's warranted? Nevada lost a ton of people. So a lot of people kind of jumped on it. And I think that's why you're seeing the line movement. Injuries have been hurting them early. What are your takes on this one?
Yeah, I mean, New Mexico State is challenging UMass for the worst team in college football this year. And so it's hard for me to say because also Nevada is in the bottom 5 as well. And so you're kind of picking the worst of two evils. And I do lean Nevada to get this job done and probably to cover, but like you said, they've lost literally everyone. And I'm not really a massive fan of doing it, but also New Mexico State has lost most of their people who were seniors and super seniors. So I don't like it, and I probably won't bet it. But if I had to, gun to head, I would take Nevada to get at least 10.
Okay. Sounds good. Any other plays, like, do you guys have anything else lined up for week 0? FAU Charlotte is another one. It looks like, Florida Atlantic laying 7.5 with Willie Taggart. And, of course, I'm sure after a long day, everybody will be looking at Vanderbilt and Hawaii. Hawaii getting 7 there. Obviously, that program taking a step back. But anything else on the board that you guys like for week 0? And if not, we can kind of roll on to some of the high-profile week 1 games.
Yeah, the only other one, like, I just run some preliminary numbers, and the one that's probably a little skewed to me as well is Wyoming, Illinois. For some reason, I probably have a little more value on the underdog side here. I like Wyoming a little bit. I know that they've lost some talent too, but Illinois had a little jump start last year, right? There were some games you could really bet in Illinois, and they played well, but there were some ones.
Scott Frost.
Yeah,
never fails.
Yeah. Then there's the others. They were terrible. They were a very Jekyll Hyde type team. So I'm not sure how they'll respond to being such a big favorite in week 1. I'm seeing a number that should have been closer to 6-7 and getting 10 in Wyoming. That's one I'm going to keep an eye on. But that's my lean right now in week 0, the one that stuck out.
Wyoming plus the 10. How do you feel about that one, Ryan?
Yeah, I have that honestly at 10.
Okay.
I do like Illinois in the long season. I also do like Wyoming. And so this is one where both teams I have overperforming, and so it comes out to pretty much a push. I have Illinois as kind of one of my bigger bets in week 1 against Indiana, to be completely honest. But yeah, here I don't really have a lean. I think Illinois in their 2 running backs, I think it fits the system. They have a massive offensive line now. They have a massive defensive line. It's pretty much just what Bielema wants to do. He wants to muck it up. He wants to have strong, good runners from his days, at Arkansas as well as Wisconsin. He knows the system. He knows how to win in the Big Ten, and I think he will eventually get it done. Is it Wyoming or Illinois? I don't know. So that's, I'm sorry. I keep going in the middle. My hot takes are done.
Nah, that's all right. No worries. I mean, listen, and there's value in that as well, right? Sometimes the best bets are the ones you don't make, right? You don't have to bet every game when week 0 comes around. We're all going to be excited. We want to have action on the games, but it doesn't mean we have to bet every one. We want to pick our spots and make sure that we end up on the right side of the ledger. So good stuff with that one.
I will say, one bet I do really like is UTEP here. I don't understand really why they are a dog in this game. And I think there is an interesting play here because I think North Texas lost a lot of people to both graduation as well as the transfer portal. UCLA scooped up 2 twins, I think the Murphy twins, who are 2 extremely strong defensive linemen. And I think that is going to be a massive loss for them. For UTEP, I think they have a strong offensive line, but honestly, where they're noted is they have a strong defense now. They've really climbed out of the basement and have honestly one of the best front sevens in that conference. And I think they rush on a pretty poor offensive line in North Texas and get the job done pretty easily to win that game.
I like it.
UTEP, the Miners, I love it.
They were like 130th for a while, right? Yeah, you're right. They have started to climb and build this thing. They were deep, and I liked them last year. They did start playing a lot better football, so it's a good take. It's a program on the rise, similar to a team I like in the Big 12 in Kansas. I think that's another team that's starting to take some strides too.
Yeah, they lost Cowing to Arizona, which is like a big loss because honestly he graded like as one of the top 10 wide receivers in college football last year. But I think I think that might be influencing the line a little too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. So hit UTEP there, plus 1.5 I'm showing, but I don't know with that. I might as well just play them at the money line to get them at even money, right? Play them on the money line, hit even money. UTEP comes out as the winner against North Texas. we enjoy our week 0. But before we get out of here, guys, I want to touch on some of the high-profile games in week 1. I want to start with probably one of the most high-profile teams in the country, the Ohio State Buckeyes. It's a team that I am very heavy on. I did play them to win the national title. At, I believe it was plus 350, I believe, somewhere in that range. And I do have, Dave, we talked about the Heisman before. And I think, Treyvion Henderson is a dark horse for the Heisman. I think in that offense, he can put up video game stats. He's just so explosive and so dynamic. And I think, when you get out of those top tier of Heisman favorites, I think he has as good a shot as anyone. But the Ohio State Buckeyes will be taking on Notre Dame. Minus 15.5 is the line here. Guys, how do we see this one going? Is this a situation where we lay the points with the Buckeyes? We know they're going to have an explosive offense. Do we look to the total? Do we look to the Buckeyes team total?
That's a tough one. I mean, I'm not probably as high on Notre Dame as a lot of people. It's a team that needs to find an identity eventually. They are going to have to join a conference. I know that probably is not what they want to do. They want to be, independent. They want to be that, brand on their own. But eventually it's coming that way in the football landscape. And with that said, I mean, they'll have takers in ACC, Big Ten, SEC, but this will be a test now where they really take on, a lot of years, even the COVID year, they played all the ACC teams as they do in basketball and every other sport. But now they're really stepping up in class to a team in the Big Ten. And I think they might get smoked. I think it could be really bad for Notre Dame. I'll get into it a little when we get closer, but my early lean is Ohio State in this one. I think it's a styles make matchups, and I think Ohio State is just going to be a little too fast, a little too dynamic. I know they lost the big 2 in the receiving core, but they still got that other guy. It's off the top of my head, but had that awesome game last year.
Jackson Smith and Jigba.
That's it. The 3 names.
Yeah. And then their second wide receiver is the son of a Hall of Famer. So
Marvin Harrison. Yeah.
Yep.
So they just roll them right
in. They'll be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. I lean that way.
Absolutely fine. I do too. I think I'm going to ultimately, I didn't bet it yet, but I think I'm ultimately going to end up laying the points or at least playing the team total. Because I think, you look at Ohio State and kind of like where they struggle, and the big question mark, the only question mark with them is really on the defensive side of the ball. And can they be physical enough, to really play against the elite top tier teams? Are they going to get kind of smashed like they did last year? And I think bringing in Knowles from Oklahoma State's going to do wonders. The question is going to be does that translate as early as week 1 against the Notre Dame team? Ryan, anything on this one? Thoughts, leans? Just kind of, do you think this number is warranted here at the 15.5?
I'm all on Ohio State, like you guys.
Yeah.
I think they'll cover that easily. And this is just a situation thing, honestly, for me. I mean, you obviously fire. Well, he is, fire him. He leaves. Brian Kelly leaves. You bring in this first-year head coach, Friedman, and then you say, by the way, your first game, you got to go to the horseshoe and play Ohio State.
Yeah.
And so I
can put up like 50 points.
Yeah. I think his tenure is going to start at week 2. No one's really going to care about this first game. And, if he proves me wrong and shows up and gets the guys going, then good on him and he'll be a great coach. But what a test. And I think you just start your tenure in week 2 and you take your beating and you let Ohio State keep going on their merry way.
Yeah, I think it could be very similar to what we saw last year. Michigan State, a ton of momentum going into that Ohio State game.
I don't know about that.
And it was like 50 points by halftime or whatever. Yeah. It was just over. They just run right through them. So I think we could see a similar thing. I don't think the Irish are going to stand much of a chance in this one. Like I said, it might not be as bad as it was with Michigan State, but I think that this game is going to define that there are levels to this. And, Ohio State and Notre Dame are on much different levels. So I'm going to probably play Ohio State, probably going to play the team total over for Ohio State as well. I think the offense is just going to be completely sick this year. But let's move on to some more competitive games in week 1. There's 2 more I wanted to touch on, or maybe not more competitive. Georgia against Oregon. Let's touch on this one, Ryan. I know you had a play on this one. Georgia minus 17 against the Oregon Ducks. Oregon going through some of the similar things that you talked about with Notre Dame, right? New coach comes in, trying to build his identity, build his culture, and now he gets to play the Georgia Bulldogs to start off his tenure. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, I think this is Georgia all the way. At the end of the day, Georgia brings back pretty much the entire offense, and I know that it took a long time for Stetson to gel, but I think Stetson's honestly a top 15, 20 quarterback in all of college football. His job gets made a lot easier, and then he has Brock Bowers to throw to and dink and dunk down to, and then you have 3 or 4 stable running backs running behind a really solid offensive line. I don't see Oregon stopping them. I think Oregon lost a ton on their defense, and obviously losing Mario, I think, is going to be a massive impact on them. And then, on the other side of the ball, Oregon now has to deal with Bo Nix, who, if anyone who watched Auburn games knows, Bo Nix plays very well in big games. He's an amazing big game quarterback. He is like, throws like 4 interceptions to the other team in big games. Yeah. Those are touchdowns in his mind. And so when you bring him back to the SEC, he's like, wait, I thought I left this. This is not a team I want to play. And then Georgia is just going to be Georgia with the defense, and they're just going to ragdoll him. So I don't know if Oregon even scores a point in the game, and Georgia scores 30 at least.
Yeah, if anyone knows Dan Lanning, it's Kirby Smart, right? Dave, you on the same page here, I'm assuming, with the Bulldogs?
I am. Bo Nix, we've been doing our college football show for 2 or 3 years now, and he is probably, out of the biggest quarterback names in the big programs, the worst quarterback we've been assessing against. He is just that bad. We have special bet against Bo Nix games, and now he's up in Oregon playing, like you said, one of the teams that he ran away from. Oregon's going to be a fringe top 25 team this year. They're not that good. It's the name in the jersey is all that's left. I'm so surprised that they can't grow any quarterback talent. Anthony Brown from BC, no. And now they're bringing in Bo Nix. It's different since Chip left, and I think this is it's a preseason game for Georgia. That's really what I feel like. I think it could be very, very easy too.
Yep. So lay the points there with the favorite, and probably, I'm assuming we see one-way traffic on this line. So if you're going to bet it, you probably want to do it now. And again, Bo Nix. I love Bo Nix. Not going to lie to you. We made a ton of money off Bo Nix betting against him. So, and it's similar to, it's funny because Dave, you can kind of attest to this. 2 years ago, I lost a ton of money on Stetson Bennett, like betting, and he drove me crazy. And then last year he made it back for us. So like Stetson Bennett now back in our good graces after last year. But it was kind of like the same thing with Bennett. It was just like I wanted to like kill Kirby Smart. And I'm like, just don't let this guy pass. Just hand it off. And then you see the progression into last year, and Georgia was a better.
Well, he's got guts.
For us.
See, for me, I don't think Bo Nix has any guts. Like he wants to run from it. Stetson was sitting there and he took it, and he's got guts. I give a lot of credit to how he
monster
developed.
Year. Monster year. But so back in our good graces, Stetson Bennett. But guys, this has been awesome. Before we get out of here, though, I do want to touch on one game that I think is very interesting in week 1, and that is Utah in Florida. 2-point spread here, Utah -2. A lot of people, when they talk about the Pac-12, they talk about Utah, Cam Rising, Treyvion Thomas. They get everybody back, on the offense. But they're playing a Florida team. Napier comes in. He's going to try and change the identity there a little bit, right? He has Richardson at quarterback, but a lot of question marks around him, right? Around the team in general. Like, all right, it's going to take a little bit of time, I think, for Napier to build up, Florida. But how do we see this one going? Utah on the road here, laying 2 points is a small favorite. Ryan, what are your thoughts here on Utah and Florida?
Yeah, so this is a tough one. I don't like either team, and frankly, I think both are overrated. So it's which one do I like less or more? And I would lean with Utah's offense. I think Cam, I think Treyvion, I think all of those guys are probably better than Anthony Richardson and who's your running back, Montrell Johnson. So I would take Utah and their offense. I think these defenses are both fairly similar. They've both lost a lot of pieces. And so I would probably side with Utah, but this is a total pass game for me.
not something you're running to the window for. Definitely. Dave,
I tell
any
you,
thoughts?
I kind of lean towards Florida here. I think it's a tough task for Utah to travel all the way east here first. It's going to be hot, and there's just a lot of factors they're just not used to doing. I think the removal of Emory Jones out of the offense and just giving it to Anthony Richardson, I think, is a big factor for Florida. New coach, like you mentioned, I think there's going to be energy. The focus has obviously been all offseason on game one, talking dogs, no respect. And I just think it's going to translate into a big performance for Florida. I like Utah. Don't get me wrong. What did we remember about Utah last year? I think, what an effort in the Rose Bowl, right? Just an awesome game. I think there might be a little bit of inflation on this spread because of what we remember from last year. I think Florida's actually in the better spot. I like Florida in this one.
Florida Live plus 115 on the money line. You can hit them there, and it'll be interesting to see where that line moves as we get a little bit closer. Might even be able to get more value on Florida because I know a lot of people are on Utah. We'll see, how the market moves that one. It's been pretty steady, I feel like, at the two for a little bit recently, but definitely going to be a fun game. I'm kind of back and forth. I think I like Utah there, but it's not something that I might bet just because it's a tough spot traveling.
Yeah.
Like the traveling in the heat to me is really, we don't know what it's going to be like in Florida.
Probably
110. It could be 110 degrees on that field. So it's, it could be a little different for them. So that's really the main thing that concerns me. It's not really the traveling, but it's like, sometimes that really can make a differess not being used to playing in that heat.
But Utah never comes east. Never.
Right. That's what I mean. And now you're coming
east.
to now you're jumping in the oven, dude. It's like you're playing on the sun, So it's a tough spot for them for sure. But listen, ton of college football coming up. I cannot wait. I'm so glad that we're just 2 weeks away from the season. Before we get out of here, guys, any closing thoughts? Anything we didn't touch on that you want to get out there? Any bets that you like that people should pounce on? We covered a lot of ground here from everything from conferences to, week 0, week 1. Ryan, do you have anything for the audience before we get out of here?
No, I think we covered a lot. If anyone wants kind of my further thoughts, download the Sharp app, get on the Discord. I post pretty much everything I'm playing in the free college football Discord channel. So pretty much you don't even have to be a subscriber to all the picks to get my knowledge. So I'm more than happy to share that and just get in there and let's chat up.
Yeah, the channel's going to be popping this year. I can't wait. So get in there. It's the free channel. So the Discord link is below in the description, guys. Hop in there. Hop in the free channel. Sweat these games out with us. It's going to be a ton of fun, but we're going to start firing off on week 0 soon, and we'll be in there, and you can, it's a great community. When Ryan puts out his bets in the NCAA football channel, it sparks up a lot of great conversation that you can kind of get a lot of different perspectives from as well. So from a lot of smart people. So good stuff, guys. Definitely hit that link at the bottom, the free Discord. Come and join us, be a part of our community. Dave, before we get out of here, anything else for the audience, or do we hit everything?
We hit it all this week, but there's another week before we get to week 0. So next week, tune back in. We didn't touch a Big 12. We will next week. One of the most volatile conferences. We got to talk SEC too. So it'll be a fun week. Tune back in right before the games start because there's some other hot takes, and I'm ready to fire. And I loved Ryan's takes today. Listen, it's not always chalk. In fact, it's never chalk. The only chalk you can get is, in college football, those 4 are going to be from the Big 5, the 4 playoff teams. But outside of that, it could be anybody. So great takes today, and looking forward to a lot more.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, awesome.
Guys.
Yeah,
absolutely. Awesome stuff, man. Can't wait. We'll definitely have you back during the season as well, man, and we'll get some bets fired up, it'll be a good time, man. I'm excited for the year. I think there's so many teams, Dave, and we'll talk about the Big 12 and the SEC next week, but teams like, Ole Miss, that, a lot of quarterback turnover and stuff like that when we get to those high-profile teams. So tune in. We'll be back with us next week, guys, as we get you ready. We'll touch on a couple different conferences, and we will start to hone in a little more on week 0, so don't miss it. Come back. But in the meantime, download the Sharp app, be a part of the community. Thanks for hanging with us. Enjoy your week, and we'll see you guys next week.